Next up, we have David Redekop from ADAMnetworks, who is going to present how trust in DNS alongside the existence of shared CDN infrastructure can lead to an interesting type of abuse in allowing users to connect to malicious domains despite other protections. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Kathy, and for everybody that focuses on name pronunciation. I find this is a group that does that well because we're multicultural here. And I thought I would start off with a pro tip. Those of you who are used to using tar, and most of your life you've been extracting, and once in a while you have to use tar to create a file, and you're not using Claude yet to write your shell scripts. One of the ways that you can remember it is to picture me in German. When I want to compress a file, I write tar, create the file. CZF, okay, there you go. Why am I here? I'm here because I come from sort of an adjacent DNS world where we believe in protective DNS as having a very broad, protective umbrella service. And it's something that if not mitigated, what we're uncovering with Underminr that I'm about to share with you, that does put the protective DNS element a little bit at risk. It doesn't need to, but we're calling the Underminr, as you'll see here in a minute. First, I want to point out that there is a press embargo on this, so please don't share this yet until middle of next week too publicly, because there's an effort underway with a number of vendors to work with us on this, and it has been going on for a little while already. Let me just jump right into what the Underminr method is that we're describing here that we've uncovered that's in somewhat broad use, which is this idea that there's an arbitration of information between what the network does at the egress point versus what happens at the content delivery network side or just the web server, say, at the other end. And that is that at the point of a departure out of a network, there is a DNS query that resolves to a content delivery network IP address. And then when the connection is made by the endpoint, say a piece of malware or maybe a click fix attack, then actually instead of connecting to the domain name that was used by DNS to resolve, it's connecting to a completely unrelated domain name. And I'm using example.com as an actual example. Is that non-ironic, or what's the word? But then we stood up an actual site called evilsite.ai, so you can actually validate this for yourself to see how this operates. So here I'm running just a simple proof of concept script that I know it's a small text on the screen, but essentially it targets a well-known domain name with a good reputation, such as example.com, but then the hidden or actual destination is evilsite.ai. So we're resolving just using dig, and then we're making a connection just using curl to show that a local cache is added of the name resolution, and then that's being used by the actual SNI when the connection is made, and then the actual response at the other end comes from evilsite.ai. Now, what's really important to note here is that we have a sequence that illustrates that there is an element of blindness at the source and a different element of blindness at the destination. And malicious use of this is basically arbitraging that information and saying, well, since at the source there's only a protective DNS filter in use, and at the destination they cannot reasonably map DNS queries to SNI connections, therefore we will just abuse that mismatching of information because it's very difficult to map that across. And some of you are familiar with domain fronting, might be comparing it to domain fronting that was largely resolved already some 10 years ago by most content delivery networks, because the bait and switch that happened between the connection and the actual destination happened at the content delivery network infrastructure layer. Whereas what happens with the Underminr approach is that the bait and switch happens between DNS and the SNI. So the exploit of this was simply shifted from CDN visibility to being where the visibility is removed, right, where it stays invisible. So the question we might have is, how bad is this actually? And so what we've done is we've stood up a website that is live today. The password prompt will be removed as of next Wednesday, where you can check on whether a domain name has been observed. Well, first of all, to see if it's underminable, right? Is it within an infrastructure that can be undermined? And so I checked DNS OARC.net, and it is not vulnerable. Then I also checked, as you would expect, by my example.com, and it is a potentially abused domain because behind that IPv4 address is every other website available from that same CDN, which, by the way, is, if you're looking at certificate transparency, it's in the 40s of millions, right? So it's, the attack surface is quite large. Now, if you look at something like Udemy.com, we're observing this in our own passive DNS regularly being abused in this way, meaning that there are connections being made by software that are only looking up Udemy.com, but then connecting to a C2 behind it. What's interesting, too, is those C2 behind Udemy.com are not in any passive DNS records, which basically means that from the onset of the C2s that were set up, were done with the purpose of not leaving any public passive DNS footprint. So what are the consequences of this? And the consequences of having this be done like this is that it's trivial for a sketchy VPN app to abuse this, and that's in fact what some of these do. By the way, these both have more than 10 million downloads. It's against Google's terms of service, but as of yesterday, the apps were still not removed. We have informed Google of them. It's very easy to deploy malware, and I don't want to give anybody any ideas. One of the reasons why we don't want to reveal the actual script in too much detail, we're not really interested in feeding LLMs with new methodologies, because it's only a matter of time before this just becomes part of every AI malware author. Doesn't even know what they're doing, but this is part of the deceptive techniques that will be happening. So we would like to call upon all defenders to basically apply effective mitigation. So if you are of the mindset, as we are, and as defenders are moving towards, doing DNS at the root of network trust, this is a broader topic. Don't talk to strangers, or zero trust DNS, as Microsoft calls it, and then doing actual protective DNS checking on the SNI domain, and pay particular attention if the domain isn't even resolved. Because if it's not even resolved, then that's a pretty good indication that this is happening. And then, as I think Andrew mentioned earlier, the importance of stripping ECH within the enterprise, within a network that you are protecting. So what we've done is at gitlab.com/ADAMnetworks, we are maintaining and publishing 2 binaries that anybody can deploy and use, and one is called Outminr. And what Outminr does is it basically is your detection mechanism. So as long as you have a network tap to where your DO53 queries are visible, that's the simplest way to do this, that can actually map also the connections by just doing a TLS unwrapping, looking at the SNI. You don't need to modify any certificate authorities on any endpoints or anything like that. It simply is a free detection tool that then you can use internally, 100% internal. And then the Underminr is if you wish to have that threat feed exchanged with others. So we've got a couple of dozen that are feeding into ours. I personally, at the moment, moderate them to make sure that there isn't any abuse in terms of how those are submitted. And then that stream becomes available so that the hidden destinations, as well as the active domains that are being used as undermining domains, are available to anybody. Quick status on where we are with a number of products. Microsoft Zero Trust DNS is vulnerable. I did report this to them, in private, I can offer you their official response too. Discriminat, those of you who are doing egress control are not vulnerable. I know Dhruv personally. He's done a good job of building Discriminat, which is egress control within the cloud. Anybody who's using pDNS only as the only protective mechanism, which is very common in BYOD environment, absolutely vulnerable. And of course, it wouldn't be complete if I didn't tell you that we discovered this because of environments where it was really important for no malware to egress and no VPNs to be able to egress. We're breaking out, and that's how the discovery was made. Many thanks to people who contributed with me. Tom Newton, some of you know from Korea, worked closely with Renee and her team at Infoblox. John, thank you, from Quad 9. Field CISO from Sophos, Chet Wisniewski, Aditi from Microsoft, and Google as well. So I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Tobias Ewig, TU Wien, and I was wondering, the slide deck is public and already indexed by Google, and when you Google for the name, you get an AI summary of the talk. How does that inflict on the embargo?
Thank you for that. I did struggle with this. This is the first time we're doing something like this, but the DNS OARC people were kind enough to remind me that when I submitted the talk, I agreed to make them public. So we tossed it back and forth and said, okay, we'll ask nicely. This is a nice group of people. Bitte, please, s'il vous plaît, por favor.
I mean, the point is, like, Google is not in this room.
I know. I know.
I think they are.
Present
nice.
company accepted.
Hi, Wouter de Vries from Cloudflare. You've seen we put a lot of websites on very few IP addresses. I kind of wonder if this is just a logical thing that follows from having encrypted client hello. Like, surely you can connect to any IP address. And if the host is SNI is encrypted, then... so what
yes.
is it, like, I'm kind of curious, like, it seems, in the beginning I saw later on you didn't really do that, but it felt like we were doing something wrong. I think, are we doing something wrong as Cloudflare, or?
Well, if Joe was here, I know exactly what he would say. David, this is how the internet is designed. It's working as designed. Yes, I understand.
This is how it is designed, right? Yeah.
It is designed that way.
Yeah.
Our problem is the design is wrong. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody, but from the perspective of a defender, what we need to think about is how do I protect the endpoint? How do I make sure that it cannot reach out where it shouldn't go? And so Zero Trust DNS, or what we call Don't Talk to Strangers, is a way where the IP address is a stranger until it is not. And then it's only bound by the time to live for that query and then collapsed again. But it's also only for that endpoint. So the caching doesn't happen for the whole network. The caching is per policy. It's a different way to think about network security, but we're trying to bridge the extremes of, I don't like third-party TLS termination. I don't like proxies. I also don't like being a network defender and not having just enough visibility to be able to make an intelligent decision about what to allow, not to allow. This, to us, is the proper middle ground, where doing zero trust or DNS at the root of trust with this approach is that middle ground. Thank you.
A very quick last question, Peter.
It's more like a comment. So the internet is designed the way it is, sure, and it's possible to not like that, but it's also possible to not like that defenses on endpoint devices themselves don't always work, because I think that would be the better location to do that. It's a layer confusion to do it in the DNS, and just because the DNS doesn't provide that protection capability, it doesn't mean that the actual protection must be introduced in the DNS. You might introduce it on the endpoint device. It's also difficult, I appreciate that. But I don't know, you could also say the endpoint device is designed wrong if it can't do that.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. I would just like to respond to say that most endpoints today, IP addresses that are alive, you cannot modify. IoT, OT, so there's a whole area where the only way you can do it is out of band.
Okay, thank you very much to David.